One day this week during lunch, I was flipping through the television stations and landed for a few moments on The Young and the Restless. It appeared that Victor was undergoing some sort of a transplant surgery, and Nikki was in the hospital chapel and deeply in grief and torn up and agonizing, fretting, and she started waxing on God's will. That God must have a plan, that God must know best. And I turned the channel. Because those sort of conversations make me cringe, particularly as they are often portrayed in various popular culture, where they are not usually treated with the seriousness that they really deserve. For example, a few years ago, Loretta Lynn released an otherwise fabulous album entitled Vanlia Rose, otherwise, except for the cringe-inducing song entitled God Makes No Mistakes. Here's what some of the lyrics. Why, I've heard people say, why is this true bent? Why, they don't have God enough to know that's the way it was meant. Why is this little baby born all twisted and out of shape? We're not to question why he does this. God makes no mistakes. Or there was the M. Night Shyamalan film Signs a few years ago. The earth is being invaded by aliens, but that's really not what the movie's about. It's really about faith. It stars Mel Gibson as a minister who's lost his faith and left the church after his wife had died in an auto accident. Kind of the final message of the movie is that the minister gets his faith back when he realizes, during the alien attack, of course, that God had planned every detail of their lives. The brother is a baseball player for a reason. The son has asthma for a reason. The daughter's picky about water for a reason, and even the wife died for a reason. Her death allows their family to be victorious years later over the invading aliens. Now, I'm not sure why his faith would return from this, because it seems like that if God was planning every detail out in this overwrought fashion, that both the alien invasion and the death of the wife could have been avoided. Just saying. Well, if we learn nothing else from a reading of the book of Job, it should be that we ought to be very careful to ever express our opinions on God's will in the context of someone else's suffering. There was once a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job. That man was blameless and upright, one who feared God and turned away from evil. Job was blessed with family and material prosperity. There's a few points we get from the opening verses of the book. First, that Uz is a fictitious land. And so we know kind of right off that this is a Jewish folktale, a legend that's told to explore some important themes. It's almost kind of like a thought experiment that you might use in a philosophy class. Another sign is that Job is declared to be sinless, blameless, here at the very beginning. That's so we won't get caught up in wondering, well, did Job really deserve what God? The point of the story is that he didn't deserve it. The folktale is imagining precisely what it might mean when someone suffers undeserved. So one day the heavenly beings came before God in his heavenly court, and the accuser comes as well. Now, the accuser is identified by the term Ha-Satan. Satan, here in the book of Job, is not a proper name. The Lord boasted of his servant Job that there is no one like him on the earth. The accuser proposes an outrageous question. Does Job fear God or nothing? Now, why is this question outrageous? It's because the people have never followed God or nothing. God has entered into covenants with people. Covenants that said God would bless them in certain ways in response to certain things that people did in return. The accuser has proposed that one should follow God even if one is not blessed. There's no mention of covenant in the book of Job. Again, I think it's another sign that we're dealing with a folk story meant to grapple with some issues. God takes the accuser's wager. A messenger comes to tell Job that his herds of oxen have been stolen and his servants killed. Immediately, another messenger arrives announcing that fire from heaven has fallen, destroying the sheep and their herders. Immediately, a third messenger arrives telling Job that a band of warriors has descended upon his camels and taken them away and slaughtered those servants as well. And immediately, a fourth messenger comes and tells Job that all of his children were feasting together in the eldest brother's house when a great wind blew down the house, killing all of Job's children at once. In a few short minutes, the family and wealth of Job are destroyed. And Job responds with worship. Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I shall return there. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. What's not enough? The accuser comes again into the heavenly court. The Lord again boasts of his servant Job, and the accuser proposes one more wager. Stretch out your hand now and touch his bone and his flesh, and he will curse you to your face. God accepts. And Job is inflicted with loathsome sores. From the sole of his foot to the crown of his head, he sits among the ashes and scrapes his skin. This has, of course, been a powerful text for those suffering with HIV and AIDS or other diseases. And so I think it's significant that we encounter it on this Sunday, in which we have marched through the AIDS walk. Well, Job's wife approaches him in his mournful state and says, "Curse God and die." But Job rebukes her. Soon, friends come to sit with him in his suffering. Now, when Job's 3 friends heard of all these troubles that had come upon him, each of them set out from his home. Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite. They met together to go and console and comfort him. When they saw him from a distance, they did not recognize him, and they raised their voices and wept aloud. They tore their robes and threw dust in the air upon their heads. They sat with him on the ground 7 days and 7 nights, and no one spoke a word to him, for they saw his suffering was very great. Now, one at this point in the story has to have deep respect for these friends. They have gone far beyond the call of duty of what one normally would do in expressing their compassion and solidarity to someone in need. 7 days they sit in silence with Job in his misery. If this was all that we knew about the friends, then we would admire them as models of care. And we learn something from them here. We can learn that the best way to express our concern is simply in solidarity, in our presence with the person in their time of need. And it may be true that silence is also a key component. Unfortunately, we live in a society that doesn't really like silence very much. It's not very comfortable with it. More than once as a pastor, I have wished that in the moment of suffering I could remain simply present and silent. But people ask questions, they want answers, they want to hear theological words. That's dangerous ground to walk, as this book is much evidence. So for 7 days, Job and his friends sit in silence, and then he finally speaks. "Let the day perish in which I was born, and the night that said a man-child was conceived, let that day be darkness. Why did I not die at birth, come forth from the womb and expire? For my sighing comes like my bread, and my groanings are poured out like water. Truly the thing that I fear comes upon me, and what I dread befalls me. I am not at ease, nor am I quiet. I have no rest, but trouble comes." I really invite you to remember these laments of Job, because I think there are days in all of our lives when some of these words are the words that we ought to remember when we are reading